5-year-old Emma Rodriguez was separated from her family during what started as a peaceful wildlife viewing experience in Yellowstone National Park, when a massive bison herd suddenly erupted into a thunderous stampede, leaving the terrified child trapped in the path of 302,000-pound animals charging across the valley floor at 30 miles per hour. The little girl had wandered just 20 feet from the designated viewing area when a tourist's flash photography startled the lead bull, triggering the kind of prehistoric chaos that had claimed countless lives throughout the American frontier. "Mama! Papa!" Emma screamed as the ground shook beneath her tiny feet, her voice completely lost in the deafening roar of hooves and bellowing that announced certain death for anyone caught in the path of North America's most dangerous land animal stampede. That's when salvation arrived in the form of 8 motorcycles. The Thunder Mountain Veterans MC were returning from a memorial ride for fallen brothers when Club President Marcus "Steel" Rodriguez spotted something that made every protective instinct in his combat-trained soul explode into action. A small child standing alone in the direct path of a bison stampede that would crush everything in its way. These leather-clad warriors were about to attempt the most dangerous rescue in American National Park history, proving that real heroes charge towards certain death when innocent life depends on split-second courage and perfect teamwork. Would you like to join us for this incredible journey? Subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss what happens next. The Thunder Mountain Veterans Motorcycle Club had been riding the highways and mountain roads surrounding America's national parks for over 14 years, their membership consisting entirely of combat veterans who had found brotherhood and purpose through their commitment to protecting civilians who ventured into the dangerous wilderness areas where traditional emergency services were hours away from providing assistance. Marcus "Steel" Rodriguez, the 49-year-old former Army Ranger commander who led the Thunder Mountain Veterans, was concluding their monthly memorial ride to honor fallen soldiers when his combat-trained eyes detected something that made every alarm in his tactical awareness system detonate simultaneously. A small figure in bright pink standing directly in the path of what appeared to be the largest bison stampede in Yellowstone National Park's recorded history. "All units, code black emergency," Steele commanded through his helmet radio to the 7 riders behind him. "Child in immediate mortal danger. Massive animal stampede in progress. Immediate intervention required. This is the real deal, brothers. We have maybe 90 seconds before that kid is trampled to death." The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. 8 motorcycles began converging on the stampede zone with military precision, their engines creating mechanical thunder that was completely overwhelmed by the natural thunder of 300 bison charging across the valley floor at stampede speed. Captain Derek "Thunder" Williams, a former Marine Force recon specialist who served as the veterans' tactical coordinator, was first to establish visual contact with what would become the most dangerous large animal rescue in their organization's history. "Visual confirmed," he radioed with controlled urgency. 5-year-old female, Hispanic, approximately 60 yards ahead of stampede front, no escape route available. Those bison will reach her position in less than 2 minutes. Through his military-grade optics, Thunder could see Emma Rodriguez standing paralyzed with terror as 300 bison approached with the unstoppable force of a natural disaster. Each animal weighed over 2,000 pounds and was capable of running 30 miles per hour, creating a wall of muscle, horn, and hooves that would obliterate anything in its path. "Jesus fucking Christ," whispered Master Sergeant Rick "Doc" Patterson, a former Special Forces medic whose wilderness medicine training had included extensive experience with large animal trauma. "That's the biggest bison herd I've ever seen in stampede mode. One of those bulls will kill her instantly, and there are 300 of them coming." Steele felt his ranger training engage as he processed the tactical nightmare they were facing. A child trapped in the path of a bison stampede represented the kind of impossible rescue scenario that required perfect coordination, split-second timing, and the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect innocent life against overwhelming natural force. All units, immediate stampede intervention protocol, Steele ordered, his army training automatically shifting him into combat command mode. Priority 1 is child extraction under extreme time pressure. Priority 2 is creating stampede disruption patterns. We're riding into the path of a natural disaster, and we're bringing that little girl home alive. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The 8 Thunder Mountain veterans who responded to Emma Rodriguez's crisis represented some of the most specialized and dangerous training available to American military forces. Former Army Rangers, Marine Force Recon Specialists, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and cavalry officers, all united by their commitment to protecting innocent life, regardless of personal risk or impossible odds. The tactical situation they faced was unprecedented in civilian emergency response. The bison stampede that threatened Emma represented one of nature's most unstoppable forces, capable of trampling anything in its path and creating ground vibrations that could be felt for miles. Historical records showed that bison stampedes had killed hundreds of people during America's frontier period. Staff Sergeant Tony "Scout" Rodriguez, a former cavalry officer whose training included large animal behavior and mounted operations, was conducting rapid assessment of stampede patterns, terrain features, and intervention possibilities. Herd analysis shows classic panic stampede behavior, he reported. Lead animals are running blind, following terrain features. Standard animal control techniques will not work against 300 panicked bison. The stampede's behavior indicated this was not territorial movement or seasonal migration, but pure panic response triggered by human interference. The bison were running in terror, following the herd instinct that had kept their species alive for thousands of years, but made them deadly to anything caught in their path. Steele made the decision that would define the most dangerous rescue operation in national park history. He began riding directly toward the stampede, knowing that his intervention would place all 8 veterans in mortal danger, but understanding that Emma had no other chance of survival. "Steele, what's the tactical plan?" Thunder demanded through radio communications as all 8 motorcycles began moving toward certain collision with 300 stampeding bison. "We're going to split the herd," Steele replied, with supernatural calm as he approached the most dangerous situation of his military and civilian career. "Create a gap in the stampede formation large enough to extract the child. High-speed insertion, precision extraction, immediate withdrawal." The tactical concept violated every principle of safe animal interaction, but it represented exactly the kind of impossible military operation that Ranger training had prepared Steele to execute when conventional approaches would guarantee failure. "Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Steele asked himself as he led his team toward what could be the last operation of their lives, knowing that failure meant watching a child die in one of the most horrific ways imaginable. The stampede intervention maneuver that followed would be studied by wildlife management specialists and military tacticians for decades to come. Steele's Ranger training had taught him that large animal movements could be disrupted through coordinated pressure applied at specific points in the formation. "All units, formation Delta 7, Steele commanded as the veterans approached the stampede zone. "Thunder and Doc, eastern flank pressure. Scout and Phoenix, western disruption. Hawk and Ranger, reserve formation. Bear stays with me for direct extraction." 8 motorcycles began executing a tactical maneuver that had never been attempted with wildlife, using coordinated high-speed movement to create pressure points in a bison stampede formation that would force the herd to split around a specific location where Emma stood trapped. The mechanical thunder created by 8 high-performance motorcycles operating in formation created noise levels that competed with the natural thunder of the stampede. But more importantly, the veterans' coordinated movement began creating the kind of pressure that made lead bison alter their running patterns. Corporal James Phoenix Martinez, a former Air Force pararescue specialist whose training included animal psychology under extreme stress, was monitoring the herd's responses to their intervention. Lead animals showing confusion and directional uncertainty, he reported. Formation pressure is creating gaps, but stampede momentum is massive. We need perfect timing for extraction. Udim. The breakthrough came when Steele and Master Sergeant Mike Bear Patterson executed the most dangerous riding maneuver in motorcycle history, threading between stampeding bison to reach Emma's position, while Thunder and the other veterans maintained formation pressure that kept the herd split around the extraction zone. "Emma! Emma!" Steele shouted as he reached the terrified child, his voice barely audible over the thunderous noise of hooves and bellowing that surrounded them. "I'm going to pick you up. Hold on to me." If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? The extraction sequence required Steele to dismount his motorcycle while moving at high speed, scoop Emma into his arms, and transfer her to Bear's motorcycle while maintaining formation with stampeding bison, passing within feet of their position. The maneuver demanded perfect timing and flawless execution under conditions that would have been impossible for anyone without military training. "Package secured," Bear announced as Emma wrapped her tiny arms around his waist, her 5-year-old mind processing that these scary men in leather were saving her from something much more frightening than any stranger could be. "All units, immediate withdrawal," Steele commanded as he remounted his motorcycle while bison continued streaming around their position. "Formation withdrawal, maintain herd pressure until clear." The withdrawal phase of the rescue required the veterans to maintain their disruption formation while gradually moving away from the stampede zone, ensuring that the bison herd continued following its altered path rather than closing the gap where Emma had been standing. Staff Sergeant Danny Hawk Patterson and Corporal David Ranger Martinez had been maintaining reserve formation to provide backup intervention if the primary extraction failed. Their position allowed them to coordinate with approaching park rangers who had been responding to reports of the stampede. "Park service units approaching from the south," Hawk reported. "ETA 5 minutes for professional wildlife management and medical response." Ndaidin, the successful completion of the extraction was achieved when all 8 veterans reached safe terrain, while the bison stampede continued across the valley, following the natural terrain features that would eventually lead them to calmer grazing areas where the panic would subside. "All units clear, child secured, 0 casualties," Steele announced as the Thunder Mountain veterans reached the safety of elevated terrain. Mission accomplished. But the rescue operation was far from complete. Emma needed immediate medical evaluation for shock and potential injuries. Her family needed to be located and reunited with their daughter, and the incident required documentation that would help prevent similar stampedes from threatening other visitors. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Emma Rodriguez's parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, had been searching frantically for their daughter since she had disappeared during the chaos that preceded the stampede. The family from Phoenix had been visiting Yellowstone for their first national park vacation when Emma had wandered away from the designated viewing area while chasing a butterfly. "Our daughter! Where is our daughter?" Maria screamed to park rangers who were coordinating the emergency response to the stampede incident. The family had been evacuated to safety when the bison began showing agitation, but the evacuation had occurred so quickly that no one realized Emma was missing until the stampede was already in progress. The reunion between Emma and her parents occurred 30 minutes after the rescue, when park rangers brought the family to the area where the veterans were providing care for the child while waiting for medical evaluation. "Mama, Papa!" Emma cried as she ran to her parents, her 5-year-old vocabulary unable to express what she had experienced, but her emotions clearly showing relief at being reunited with familiar faces. "How can we ever thank you?" Carlos asked Steele, as Maria held Emma tightly, their voices shaking with emotions that ranged from gratitude to residual terror. "You saved our baby's life." "Sir, protecting children is what we do," Steele replied with quiet dignity. "Emma's safe now, and that's all that matters. Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Maria Rodriguez asked the 8 veterans, tears streaming down her face as she realized the magnitude of what these strangers had risked for her daughter. The professional emergency response that followed was coordinated by Dr. Patricia Chen, a pediatric emergency physician who had been called to assess Emma's condition, and wildlife biologist Dr. Michael Thompson, who needed to understand the factors that had triggered the largest bison stampede in Yellowstone's recent history. Emma shows no physical injuries, but she's experiencing severe shock from what was an extremely traumatic experience, Dr. Chen reported after completing her medical examination. Children who witness or experience stampede situations often develop lasting trauma that requires specialized counseling. Dr. Thompson's analysis of the stampede revealed that the incident had been triggered by a tourist who had used flash photography despite warnings about disturbing wildlife. The flash had startled a dominant bull, which had triggered the panic response that spread through the entire herd. This stampede was caused by human behavior that violated park regulations and endangered everyone in the area, Dr. Thompson explained to park officials. The veterans' rescue prevented what would have been a fatal incident, but we need better enforcement of wildlife safety rules to prevent future stampedes. The investigation into the incident revealed gaps in visitor education and enforcement that were common throughout America's national park system, where millions of tourists encountered dangerous wildlife without understanding the risks their behavior created. But for the Thunder Mountain veterans, prevention education was secondary to the knowledge that they had saved a child's life and demonstrated that military training could be effectively applied to civilian emergencies that exceeded the capabilities of traditional park services. 8 months after her rescue from the bison stampede, 5-year-old Emma Rodriguez had transformed from a traumatized child into a confident young park enthusiast who had found an extended family of 8 protective uncles who had shown her that courage meant protecting others from the dangerous forces of nature. The Thunder Mountain veterans had not only saved her life, they had taught her that strength came from understanding wildlife and respecting the wilderness that made America's national parks both beautiful and dangerous. Steele Rodriguez sat in Emma's family living room in Phoenix, reviewing the latest national park safety reports, while the sound of motorcycles arriving for their monthly family gathering echoed from the suburban driveway. The modest house had been transformed with advanced emergency communication systems, but more importantly, it had become the emotional headquarters of an organization that now understood their mission, included education and prevention that could save lives before stampedes occurred. "The new wildlife safety protocols are working," Steele reported to Emma's parents as he studied the latest incident statistics from Yellowstone National Park. Bison-related injuries are down 70% since we implemented the Veterans Wildlife Safety Education Program, and visitor compliance with safety guidelines has improved dramatically. Emma smiled as she watched veteran members setting up tables for their monthly strategy meeting, each of them former soldiers who had become her mentors, teachers, and the family that had taught her what real bravery meant. Her relationship with each veteran was unique. Steele taught her leadership and decision-making. Thunder shared wildlife knowledge. Doc provided first aid training adapted for children. The relationship between Emma and the veterans had evolved far beyond the dramatic rescue that had brought them together. The young girl had become the inspiration for their expanded mission, that now included national park education, family safety training, and youth development programs that taught children practical wildlife awareness while building character and environmental responsibility. "Tell me about the Emma Rodriguez National Park Safety Foundation," her mother Maria requested, noting the detailed program materials spread across Steele's briefcase related to the non-profit organization that had been established to prevent other children from facing the danger Emma had survived. "We're now operating wildlife safety education programs in 12 national parks throughout the western United States," Steele explained with enthusiasm. Emma's experience showed us that children can survive impossible situations when they have proper education and when adults are prepared to risk everything to protect them. But more importantly, it showed us that most wildlife emergencies can be prevented through better visitor education. The Emma Rodriguez National Park Safety Foundation represented something unprecedented in federal park management. Military veterans using their combat training and tactical expertise to develop wildlife safety education that could prevent dangerous encounters while training emergency response capabilities that could save lives when prevention failed. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Dr. Patricia Chen, the pediatric trauma specialist who had been working with Emma since the Stampede incident, was amazed by her emotional development and leadership abilities despite surviving one of the most terrifying experiences a child could face. "Emma's recovery has exceeded every psychological prediction we made," she reported during a presentation to the American Academy of Pediatric Psychology. "Her transformation demonstrates the powerful impact that positive adult relationships and purposeful activity can have on childhood trauma recovery." The secret to Emma's remarkable healing wasn't just the therapy she had received. It was the veterans' understanding that children who had faced mortal danger needed more than professional treatment to recover. They needed purpose, adventure, education, and the knowledge that their survival could help protect other children from similar dangers. Dr. Chen's research had documented measurable improvements in Emma's cognitive development, environmental awareness, leadership skills, and emotional resilience that correlated directly with her involvement in wildlife safety education and her integration into the veterans' mission-focused family structure. Emma's case challenges conventional assumptions about childhood wildlife trauma recovery, Dr. Chen explained to colleagues studying pediatric environmental psychology. "When children have access to purposeful activities that use their survival experience to help others understand nature's dangers, their healing capacity far exceeds what trauma psychology typically predicts." Doc Patterson had become Emma's wilderness medicine instructor, using his Special Forces medical training to teach her advanced first aid skills, while also serving as her guide for understanding how medical knowledge could save lives in emergency situations involving dangerous wildlife. Emma's not just learning first aid, she's learning to be a protector, Doc explained to Park Service professionals who observed their training sessions. She understands that surviving the stampede gives her knowledge that could help other people prepare for and safely experience America's national parks. The wilderness medicine training that Emma received was adapted for her age and physical capabilities, but it included real skills that could make the difference between life and death for someone facing a medical emergency in remote park areas where professional help might be hours away. "Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Emma asked Doc during one of their training sessions, eager to understand how she could use her knowledge to help other families visiting national parks. Doc's answer became a teaching moment about service, environmental stewardship, and the responsibility that came with survival experience. "I've helped many people during my military service and with the veterans," he explained. "But the most important thing I've learned is that protecting people starts with understanding the environment we're visiting and staying prepared for the dangers that wildlife and nature can present." If you've watched this far, say in the comments, What secret do you keep? Thunder Williams had applied his Marine Force recon training to developing Emma's wildlife awareness skills, teaching her advanced techniques for animal behavior recognition, safety positioning, emergency signaling, and environmental navigation that went far beyond typical youth park education. Emma faced the ultimate national park danger and survived because good adults were willing to risk their lives for her. Thunder explained to park management conferences throughout the region. Now, she's learning skills that could help her survive other dangerous encounters and maybe help her save someone else who needs protection in America's wilderness areas. Thunder's approach to Emma's education combined practical wildlife skills with character development that emphasized environmental responsibility, personal safety awareness, and the kind of courage that had motivated the veterans to risk their lives for a child they didn't know. Emma's wildlife awareness skills had advanced to levels that impressed professional park rangers and wildlife biologists. But more importantly, she had developed the kind of calm environmental understanding that could help her make good decisions around dangerous animals and provide leadership when other people were frightened or unprepared. Scout Rodriguez had channeled his cavalry training into developing Emma's tactical observation and problem-solving abilities, teaching her to analyze wildlife behavior patterns and develop response strategies that used environmental awareness effectively. Emma learned about dangerous animals and survival the hard way, Scout explained to youth development professionals studying their programs. Now we're teaching her to observe wildlife behavior strategically and to understand that most dangerous encounters can be avoided when you stay alert and respect the animal's natural behaviors. The tactical observation skills that Emma developed were applicable far beyond wildlife encounters. She was learning to approach academic challenges, social situations, and family problems using systematic observation and environmental thinking that would serve her throughout her life. Emma's teachers at Phoenix Elementary School reported that she showed exceptional environmental awareness, advanced critical thinking abilities, and a mature understanding of safety that influenced her entire class positively. Emma has become a natural leader who helps other children understand wildlife safety and environmental responsibility, observed her teacher, Mrs. Patricia Martinez, during parent conferences. She's learned to observe before acting, but she's also learned to act decisively when safety requires immediate response. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. Phoenix Martinez had established a youth park safety emergency response program that taught children throughout the western United States practical skills for surviving various types of wildlife encounters while building their confidence and environmental stewardship. Children like Emma face wildlife dangers that adults often create through poor park behavior, inadequate supervision, or lack of understanding about living safely around dangerous animals in their natural habitat, Phoenix explained during presentations to National Park Service administrators. Our program teaches children practical skills for surviving wildlife encounters while also educating adults about their responsibilities for creating safe park experiences. The youth emergency response training included age-appropriate instruction in wildlife behavior, emergency communication, basic survival skills, and coordination with park rangers and emergency responders who could provide professional assistance when needed. Emma had become the program's primary student instructor, helping other children learn wildlife safety skills while demonstrating that surviving scary encounters could make someone stronger rather than more fearful. Her participation in training sessions throughout the national park system had inspired hundreds of children to take environmental safety seriously. When Emma tells other kids about staying calm and using wildlife awareness during dangerous encounters, they listen because she's actually survived something that would have killed most people, Phoenix observed during program evaluations. She's living proof that children can be smart and brave when they understand the environment they're visiting. Bear Patterson had developed a specialized family park safety program that taught entire families how to visit national parks safely while maintaining appropriate wildlife awareness and emergency response capabilities. Emma's family learned park safety the hard way when their daughter nearly died because of inadequate environmental awareness and insufficient understanding of wildlife behavior, Bear explained to family recreation organizations throughout the Southwest. Our program helps families develop the knowledge and skills they need to safely enjoy America's amazing national parks. The family safety program included instruction in animal behavior, safety positioning, emergency communication, and coordination with park management agencies that could provide professional assistance when wildlife encounters exceeded family capabilities. Emma's family had become the program's demonstration family, showing other visitors how environmental safety education could enhance rather than limit their national park experiences. Their example had been crucial for convincing other families to invest time in learning skills that could save lives. "Tell me, have you ever saved someone?" Emma asked during family safety presentations, encouraging other children to understand their role in keeping their families safe during national park visits. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? Hawk Patterson had expanded his military logistics background to develop a comprehensive park safety monitoring program that identified and addressed wildlife hazards in popular visitor areas before they could threaten families with children. Emma's stampede encounter occurred in an area that had been showing increased bison activity, but warning systems and visitor management were inadequate to prevent the incident, Hawk explained to Park Service administrators. Our monitoring program helps parks maintain safety standards that protect families while preserving wildlife habitat and natural behaviors. The park monitoring program included regular wildlife assessments, visitor flow management, hazard identification, and coordination with emergency response agencies to ensure that problems could be addressed before they created dangers for children and families. The program had identified and addressed dozens of potential wildlife hazards throughout the national park system, preventing conditions that could have led to serious injuries or deaths among the millions of families who visited America's parks annually. Ranger Martinez had established a rapid response network that coordinated between Thunder Mountain veterans and Park Service personnel to provide immediate assistance when families encountered wildlife emergencies that exceeded traditional ranger capabilities. Traditional park emergency response operates on response times that can be measured in hours when incidents occur in remote areas, Ranger explained to emergency services conferences. Our network positions veteran responders strategically throughout park systems, so we can respond to wildlife emergencies in minutes rather than hours. The Rapid Response Network had already prevented several potential fatalities, including a family trapped by aggressive elk, 2 separate incidents involving hikers who had encountered aggressive bears, and multiple cases where improper wildlife interaction had created dangerous situations. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. The annual Emma Rodriguez Day celebration had become the largest park safety event in the American Southwest, bringing together thousands of families whose lives had been touched by Emma's story or the Veterans National Park safety programs. The event commemorated not just her rescue from the bison stampede, but the ongoing work that had grown from that terrifying incident. 8 months ago, I almost died in a stampede because my family and I didn't know how to be safe around wildlife, Emma addressed the enormous crowd during the anniversary celebration, speaking with remarkable confidence for someone so young. Today, my veteran family and I teach thousands of families how to visit national parks safely while being prepared to help each other when wildlife emergencies happen. "Geez, The celebration included wildlife safety demonstrations, emergency response training, environmental education presentations, and testimonials from families who had used safety skills to prevent or survive dangerous wildlife encounters. 6-year-old Marcus Chen shared his experience using Emma's safety training during a family visit to Grand Canyon National Park. When we saw elk showing aggressive behavior near our picnic area, I remembered what Emma taught us about backing away slowly and making ourselves appear non-threatening. My parents called the park rangers, and we moved to a safe area until they managed the situation. Marcus's successful wildlife encounter, using techniques taught in Emma's safety programs, embodied everything the young girl and the veterans were working to achieve through their environmental education initiatives. 7-year-old Sofia Martinez told her story about helping prevent a family from approaching bison in Yellowstone National Park. When I saw other tourists getting too close to take pictures of bison, I used what Emma taught me about speaking up when other people might be in danger. I told my parents, who told the rangers, and they stopped the dangerous behavior before anyone got hurt. The community that had formed around Emma's rescue represented something unprecedented in national park safety education, a sustainable collaboration between military veterans, park service professionals, emergency response agencies, and families committed to enjoying America's natural heritage safely and responsibly. Local park superintendent Dr. Robert Williams spoke about the practical impact of their wildlife safety efforts during the anniversary celebration. Before Emma's programs, we had multiple wildlife-related injuries every month during peak season, he testified. We haven't had a single serious wildlife incident in 8 months because the veterans' education programs help visitors understand how to behave safely around dangerous animals. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. 2 years after the bison stampede incident, Emma Rodriguez had been appointed as the youth spokesperson for the National Park Service Wildlife Safety Advisory Committee, where her programs and philosophy were being implemented throughout America's national park system. The 5-year-old, who had once faced death from a prehistoric stampede, was now influencing federal policies that protected families throughout the nation's most treasured natural areas. The advisory committee appointment represented official recognition of Emma's unique expertise and the effectiveness of the veteran-led approach to park safety education that had grown from her rescue. But for Emma personally, it represented an opportunity to ensure that other children would never face the terror she had survived. Emma's survival and leadership have demonstrated that children can not only recover from traumatic wildlife experiences, but can become powerful advocates for protecting other families, commented Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, the committee's chair. Her programs show how military veterans, park service professionals, and community members can work together to create safer visitor experiences in our national parks. Emma's first recommendation to the committee was the establishment of federal funding for community-based park safety programs that combined veteran volunteer services with professional environmental education and emergency response capabilities. Her proposal was based on documented results from the veterans programs rather than theoretical approaches to visitor management. The committee's unanimous approval of Emma's recommendations led to the creation of the National Park Veterans Safety Initiative, a federally funded program that provided grants for veteran organizations to develop wildlife safety education in coordination with park services, schools, and emergency response agencies. The Veterans Park Safety Model had been adopted by veteran organizations in 8 states, creating a network of volunteer emergency responders who understood that protecting communities required specialized attention to the unique dangers that families faced when visiting areas where dangerous wildlife was protected and preserved. Emma's work with the committee required her to participate in meetings and presentations that challenged many adults. But her natural leadership abilities and her first-hand experience with wildlife danger made her an effective advocate for policies that addressed families' real needs. I can help lawmakers understand what families really need to be safe around dangerous animals because I've been in the worst danger possible, and I know what it feels like to be helpless, Emma explained to committee members during policy discussions. Adults make better decisions when they remember that children depend on them to know how to keep everyone safe when visiting places where wild animals live. Tell me, have you ever saved someone? Emma asked committee members, challenging them to understand their responsibility for creating policies that could prevent wildlife tragedies throughout America's park system. If you've watched this far, say in the comments, what secret do you keep? 3 years after 8 motorcycles had converged on a bison stampede to save one child, the ripple effects of Emma's rescue continued to spread throughout America's national park system and beyond. The veterans' model of military-led wildlife safety education had been implemented in 37 parks, creating a network of programs that had helped hundreds of thousands of families develop safe visitation skills while providing emergency response capabilities. The expansion had been carefully managed to ensure that safety standards and program effectiveness weren't compromised by rapid growth. New veteran chapters were required to complete extensive training in wildlife behavior, park management, and youth education, demonstrating commitment to both veteran welfare and family protection. The Thunder Mountain veterans had grown to over 100 active members across 6 states, with chapters providing emergency response, safety education, family training, and youth development services that serve tens of thousands of families annually. Their success with park safety programming had attracted support from major conservation organizations and federal agencies. Emma's influence extended beyond direct service delivery to fundamental changes in how the National Park Service understood the relationship between visitor safety and wildlife conservation. Her programs demonstrated that effective park management required coordination between veteran expertise, professional park services, and community education. Emma taught us that every child saved from wildlife danger has the potential to save others, Steele reflected during his presentation at the International Wildlife Management Conference. The girl we rescued from a stampede has created programs that protect thousands of families from all kinds of park dangers that education and preparation can prevent. The presentation brought together over 6,000 professionals from around the world who were studying innovative approaches to visitor safety and wildlife management. Emma's story and the veterans' programs had influenced safety policies in 15 countries with significant wildlife tourism. Emma, now 7 years old and serving as the Veterans Director of Youth Park Education, had been chosen to address the international conference. Her transformation from terrified victim to confident environmental advocate represented the kind of growth that effective support and purposeful environmental education could inspire. 3 years ago, I almost died because my family didn't understand how dangerous wild animals could be, Emma told the international audience with remarkable composure. Today, my veteran family and I work every day to help families learn how to visit parks safely with America's amazing but dangerous wildlife, while being prepared to help each other when scary things happen. If you're enjoying the story, write from which city you are listening to in the comments. 5 years after her rescue from the bison stampede, Emma Rodriguez was serving as a youth consultant for the National Park Service while maintaining her role as a student leader in the veterans' expanded education programs. The girl who had once faced death from a prehistoric stampede was now helping develop policies that protected families throughout America's national park system. The lesson I learned that day wasn't just that good people exist when you need help, Emma told audiences at the National Park Safety Conference, speaking with environmental wisdom that exceeded her age. The lesson was that everyone has the responsibility to learn how to visit parks safely with wildlife, and that the scariest experiences can teach us how to help other people enjoy nature without getting hurt. Emma's presentation included statistical analysis of 5 years of veterans programs, over 100,000 families trained in park safety, 75,000 children educated in wildlife awareness, 50,000 adults certified in park emergency response, and measurable improvements in visitor safety throughout America's national park system. But Emma's presentation focused more on individual stories than statistics. Specific examples of families who had used environmental education to avoid wildlife conflicts, children who had helped during park emergencies, and communities that had developed comprehensive safety networks that prevented tragedies. These aren't just success stories, Emma explained to the national audience with remarkable environmental eloquence. These are proof that families can safely enjoy America's national parks when they understand wildlife behavior properly, and that communities can prevent tragedies when everyone understands their responsibility to help keep each other safe in places where wild animals live. The national attention had led to requests for technical assistance from park management agencies throughout the world, as countries with large wildlife populations and tourism industries wanted to understand how veteran organizations could enhance visitor safety programs. 10 years after 8 bikers had heard a child scream during a bison stampede, Emma Rodriguez continued to serve as a park safety advocate while pursuing her education and maintaining her role as an inspiration for the veterans' expanded environmental mission. The organization had trained park safety teams in 42 states and had contributed to preventing thousands of wildlife conflicts and visitor emergencies. The location where Emma had faced the stampede had been converted into the Emma Rodriguez National Park Safety Education Center, a facility that provided training for families, park professionals, and emergency responders, while serving as a memorial to the courage that ordinary people could show when children needed protection from natural forces. Tell me, have you ever saved someone? Emma's story asked everyone who heard it, challenging them to understand that environmental heroism wasn't just for people with special training, but for anyone willing to learn park safety skills and to act decisively when someone needed help. The bison herd that had nearly trampled Emma continued to thrive in Yellowstone National Park under improved management policies that protected both wildlife and visitors, while Emma's experience led to enhanced visitor education programs that prevented dangerous encounters throughout America's park system. The 8 bikers who had stopped everything to save one child from a bison stampede had created a legacy that continued to protect families throughout America's national parks. Emma's story demonstrated that heroes could appear anywhere, that environmental wisdom could be learned and taught, and that the most terrifying wildlife encounters could become the foundation for helping countless other people safely enjoy America's natural heritage. Emma's legacy would continue for generations, proving that sometimes the smallest victims can inspire the largest environmental safety movements, and that when good people commit to protecting families in America's wildest places, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things that save innocent lives in the nation's most treasured natural environments.